joined now, as we are every week, by senior producer from NFL Films, Greg Cosell, also co-host of ESPN's NFL Matchup Show, and Greg Cosell's appearance on the show presented by Scott Lawnyard, an official commercial site work partner of the Buffalo Bills. Greg, happy holidays, happy New Year. We're coming down the stretch here. Bills have won 3 straight. They got 2 more to put in the bucket. And they've got a Patriots team that surprised them back in Week 7. But as we know, a lot has changed with this Patriots roster, and not just at quarterback. And Ramondre Stevenson even goes on IR this week, so he is officially done for the season. And even though Bailey Zappe has probably brought some functionality to this Patriots offense, they are still last in the league in scoring. I know they've won 2 of their last 3, but this seems like a winnable game for the Bills if they just take care of their own business.
I would think so, despite the Bailey Zappe experience. I would agree. The Patriots offensively, Zappe, he's a timing rhythm guy. He'll throw the ball. He's actually a pretty aggressive thrower when he sees it. But he's certainly not a big time arm talent, but he will throw it, and you have to be careful. He made a great throw last week. It's probably his best throw last week was versus believe it was cover 2, and it was to the outside, but in the outside void. But he can, and he's got some mobility to him as well. That's the other thing you have to be careful about. He does have some functional mobility to him. Here you're seeing it here. This is the touchdown to Gesicki, which you see the movement. He can do that, but you'd be hard pressed to believe that this team offensively would put up a lot of points. So the question is, and remember last week we talked about the Bills and their offense, and they only put up, what was it? What was the final last week?
24. They put up
24.
Yeah, 24. But I mean, it was a little bit of a struggle early, as it always seems to be for the Bills.
What is athleticism the only difference or the biggest difference that Zappe brings to the offense over Mac Jones?
The only difference, I would say, to me, again, I'm not there in the building, so I don't know how they all see it. I think that he's a little more aggressive as a thrower. I think there are some balls he'll turn loose that I'm not sure that Mac Jones would. So I think, you want to be careful about that. And I think, I just think that he's more willing to make some tougher throws. He does see things well. He gets the ball out effectively in the short to intermediate areas. He can make timing fade and seam throws. As I said, he can hit the outside void in cover 2. He'll certainly throw fades when it's one-on-one coverage. He threw a couple last week against Patrick Surtain, who arguably is the best corner in the game. So, he's willing to be aggressive throwing the football.
Flipping it over to the defensive side, Greg, we know that Belichick and his defensive staff like to use players in a position-fluid type of way, not at every position, but at some. And I was struck by how much Miles Bryant was getting moved around. I mean, he played nickel corner. He played outside corner. He lined up at safety. And I'm thinking to myself, I know they had some injuries at the safety position,
Sure.
And there are a couple of guys still on the injury report today for them at that spot. And maybe it's a byproduct of them being a little thin back there as well. What did you see that suddenly has made Miles Bryant this versatile chess piece for them?
Well, Brownie, he's been doing that somewhat all season long. This is not just recent. He's played, at his core, he's their slot corner. At his core. But they do play him depending on personnel, depending on what the coverage call may be. They do play him at safety. So this is not something new. They also play the rookie, Mapu, at safety and kind of linebacker as well. They do move people around quite a bit. And our old friend, the former Bills draft choice, Alex Austin played a ton of right corner last week for them. So, particularly in dime. I mean, and he played a lot nickel as well because Sean Wade got hurt. And I remember liking Austin when he came out of college, Oregon State, I believe. And I think I even told you guys I thought he had an NFL skill set. And obviously he's getting a chance to play in the league. He's got length. I would assume he's going to play this week, depending on all their injuries. Jabril Peppers got hurt last week, and I think it's a hamstring, so I would think he's not likely to play.
Right. And you look at this defense, it's continued to play really well, even with all these injuries going on. Offensively, they've had a lot less injuries, and they still can't get it together. Why is it that, and a lot of people point to their roster and say, hey, they don't have enough good players. How can a team miss on one side of the ball with their personnel decisions and hit so well on their other side of the ball with their personnel decisions? Is that the way you see it?
You're talking about their offense now?
Yeah, I'm talking about both sides of the ball. Their offense, they don't seem to have any players good enough to play.
No.
And then on defense, they don't have anybody good enough to play, but they play no matter who plugs in.
Yeah, that's a great point. Offensively, I think in some ways it starts up front. I mean, look, if you look at who they played last week, and a lot of these guys have played all year, so it wasn't just last week against Denver, by the way. But, I mean, they sort of rotated at left tackle with Brown, who's been in the league a long time, and then Lowe, who is, I believe, a second-year player out of Illinois. Then at left at left guard, they had Ferencz, who played 4 snaps and was replaced by Mafi. Andrews has been the starting center for years. Sal is at right guard. He's a rookie. Onwenu's the right tackle. He's been around, but it's not a really good O-line. I mean, it's tough to play in this league when your O-line is not particularly good, and I think that's shown up quite a bit this year. No matter what else you have, Steve, you know this. If your O-line can't play real well, it's hard to run any kind of meaningful offense.
Right.
Looking at that defensive front, though, the combination of Godshaw and Barmore was very effective last week. And, they're number 1 in the league in yards per carry against, number 2 in the league in run defense. Is this an example of you better get to the edges because running between the tackles is simply not going to happen against this group?
They're not. They're really good. I mean, Godshaw is someone I noticed a couple of years ago, and I said, "Wow, this guy's a really good player." And Barmore, of course, came out of Alabama. He was a high draft choice. They have some good players, even with obviously Matthew Judon out essentially for the year. Keon White has had some really good snaps, good reps, and he's the rookie from Georgia Tech. Wise has always been a really, really good player. So they're still really good up front. I mean, essentially at linebacker too, they've been playing the same 2 guys just about all season in Bentley and Jelani Tavai, and they are good players too. And then they bring in Mac Wilson, depending on, the situation, and he's a solid player. It's really on the back end where they've had to work through injuries and they've had some struggles. But Brownie, I think that front group is a solid group, and they are not easy to run against, as you said, certainly between the tackles.
Has anybody had any sustained success against this defense? It seems like from series to series, they adjust as well as any defense in the league well.
And checking.
So give us an idea about what teams have that has been successful against the Patriots, because they haven't won very many games.
I'll tell you, I mean, to me, what I think you have to do is I think you've got to work outside in the pass game. I don't think their corners are very good. Jonathan Jones is playing outside simply because they have had so many injuries. And to me, he's a slot corner. Wade's been playing. He got hurt. Now it's Austin. At times Brian may go out there. I think this is a team that you can attack in the pass game on the outside. I think that is their weakness. And again, obviously you always have to protect, but I think that's the area where you feel when you look at this defense. And again, I hope people understand, I'm not saying you throw it every time. That's not my point. You don't do one thing every time, no matter what the opponent's weakness is. But I do believe that they can work effectively on the outside in this game. And I think that's what they need to do.
It's been about 5 games now, Greg, that Joe Brady has been the offensive coordinator here in Buffalo. It's still a small sample size, but I'm curious for your impressions of what he has done to maybe diversify the attack It seems like every week a different player is stepping up and contributing in a big way. Gabe Davis last week, James Cook the week before. And, we kind of think that Brady does a good job of attacking the matchup weakness of the opponent each and every week. I'm curious for your impressions on what Brady has done for this offense here the last 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some obvious things. Certainly there's been a commitment to running the ball. There's been a commitment to getting James Cook involved more in the pass game. I still think, though, Brownie, they're struggling to generate explosive plays in the pass game. I'm talking about by design. I mean, we know that Josh Allen can make plays. But, even when he makes plays, like when he hit that 57-yard touchdown last week to Davis, I mean, he really had a throw within the structure of the play call, and obviously the result turned out to be great. So I still think overall they're struggling to generate explosive plays. I think that needs to be the next step, doing that through design and structure. It's been kind of an issue through much of the season. So we'll see how they attempt to do that this week. Because when you play teams you're better than, we talked about this last week, and the game played out exactly that way. I mean, look, if it wasn't for Josh making a Josh play to getting the ball to Shakir versus that blitz late in the game, they may lose that game. And, we talked about the fact that you can't keep bad teams hanging around. So, I just would like to see, and maybe this is the next step. Maybe they're working toward this because Joe Brady obviously has only been doing it for 5 games. But I'd like to see some more explosive plays by design through orchestration in the pass game.
Yeah, and certainly when you look at the top guys, Mahomes can do it off script. Lamar does it off script. Josh certainly does it off script. And while it's great, you really need him to stand in the pocket and make throws. Yeah. And ultimately, when you get into the playoffs, isn't that really what wins? I mean, certainly those you may need a handful or less than a handful of off-the-script plays, but ultimately in this league, it's about a guy making the throws from the pocket.
Yeah, and I think, look, if we're being honest, and I'm being honest because I watch the tape, and every summer I watch Josh Allen, as I've probably told you guys, I pick 9 or 10 quarterbacks that I watch about 250 dropbacks, and Josh Allen I do every year because I enjoy watching him play. But I think the one area that he clearly needs to continue to improve is he does leave the pocket prematurely. And I think that he's a part of the fact that sometimes those explosive plays don't get made because he does leave the pocket prematurely and doesn't allow the plays to develop. So, I think that's something that they need to work on as well. And ideally they are, and ideally he understands that as well. But that's really kind of the next step. And by the way, he's done this in his career, which is why I find it so interesting. He's had stretches where he's stood in the pocket and made unbelievable throws, which, as I've said many times, he's the most physically gifted quarterback in the league. To me, that's not even a question. But, I think he's part of that equation. He's got to stand there, let the offense work for him. Instead, I guess the way to say it, let the offense work for him instead of he being the offense. And those are two different things.
Yeah, no, totally get it. Greg, thanks very much for the time. We appreciate it. Have a happy new year. We'll catch up with you next week.
Look forward to it, guys. Hope you guys get a little time off. You know me. I'll be here on Monday grinding away.
Oh, there you go. We got a show on Monday. We're working too.
We'll be there.
Oh, good. Okay. That makes me feel better. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. All right. Take care, Greg.